Greetings. Well, today I'm inspired to discuss fruit trees and human time. I've been selling trees, growing trees, planting trees for quite a while now. I've had a lot of opportunities to observe how it is that other human beings react to the idea of planting trees that take a considerable period of time to grow. The general consensus amongst human beings is that trees take a long time to grow. I know whenever I point out trees that I have here that grew incredibly fast, people are usually stunned. They can't believe it because they tend to have a belief and a mindset that trees are very slow. When I get into the nursery and I'm selling people fruiting plants, that's usually the first question out of most folks' mouths. It's, how long will it take? How long will it take to fruit, from that size? Can I get a bigger one? And so on and so forth. I find it both normal that we would consider how long it takes something to happen, in our lives. That's pretty natural. On the other hand, I consider it kind of odd when, I would say, I tell somebody, that tree takes about 7 years, or this one's probably going to take 15 years before it fruits. The people will frequently veto the whole idea that, no, I can't do that. I kind of look at them every once in a while. I'll give them a small bit of advice on the subject of time, but most of the time I just let it go because it's very pervasive, this attitude about time. As some of you who understand like Einstein's theories of relativity and a bit about physics, that time is not physically a fixed commodity. Okay, there is no such thing as one time. Time is variable depending on its proximity to mass and how fast it's moving. You approach the speed of light, time slows down. If you get closer and closer to very massive objects, again, time slows down to the point where, it could even possibly stand still. But that's physical time, and that hasn't really got too much to do with what I would call the psychological time. The psychological time is even more various than physical time. Physical time, you can do some math with it in physics, and you can kind of calculate roughly, how fast or slow it's going to be moving, in relationship to mass or speed. But not when it comes to human psychological time. Human psychological time is almost completely and totally unpredictable. The only thing I can say about probably most of us, and that is that we don't believe we have enough of it. The shortage of time is a common human affliction. It is so common, and in a way I see it as so irrational that I refer to it as time sickness. My perspectives on it, I believe, when I lived in northern Wisconsin, we didn't push time very much. I used to refer to it as that I live on a coyote, eagle, in Timberwolf time, live in the same time zone as the bears do. The time is a very natural thing that has to do with, rotation of the earth, the sun getting up in the morning, and the difference between winter and summer and so on. That's kind of the way we see time in northern Wisconsin. Oh, it's winter time. Yeah, you know, wow, it's summertime. The mosquitoes are out. But I moved, after many years living under those circumstances, into the California, San Francisco Bay Area. Right there in the heart of Silicon Valley, right? We get time for rain too. It looks like we had drought time for a while. We may be coming back into rain time. Last couple of days it hasn't stopped raining. I should have figured we started building the shed, right? Kevin, he's going crazy. He wants to come by and spend time putting the shed together. He got started at it. He doesn't want to quit, but it's pouring. Gracie, my cat, same thing. It had been dry for weeks and weeks, and Gracie was having so much fun chasing everything around the whole farm. Now all of a sudden it's raining. She's come back in soaking wet at least 6 times today. Yeah, she insists. I'm gonna find something out there. She just keeps coming in wet. But when I moved from, I digress. When I moved from northern Wisconsin, living on Timberwolf and Eagle time, I found myself in Silicon Valley time, which was pretty much, why isn't it done yesterday? I mean, I'm only asking you today, In other words, everything needed to be finished before anybody even thought it had to come about. It's like the head spin, time sick, tongue hanging out. Can't keep up with time. Time keeps moving faster on us, Yeah. Well, you say there are numerous different ways that we have psychological time. Well, I'm a short timer. When you're only 2 years old and you've only lived 2 years, a year is a long time. That's half of your life. But as you get further and further into life, you're 50, you're 70, you're 80. Well, you haven't got too much of it left. Each little moment you have by the second is actually precious, because it might be your last breath, And so the perception of time alters. We see time differently as we get older than we do when we're younger. It's probably one of the main differences in the way people's minds work at different ages, is the way they perceive time in their lives. So there's so many different ways. I'm sure many of you have had that experience of where time stood still. Yeah, I certainly have, more than once. It's usually, in one of those dreadful moments where there's an incredible surge of adrenaline into the system, and you have to avoid the gas truck that's sliding on the ice on the freeway, and the car is filled with your family, and it's the holidays, right? Yeah, like that, and time just stands still, man. Yeah. Sometimes it seems you can do things you ordinarily would never have been able to do. I sidestepped a broken chainsaw blade one time. Gosh, it come off. Looked like a cobra coming up. The chainsaw had been running full tilt. And so that blade was going around, I don't know how many RPM. The fact that I could have watched that blade come up off that saw and then said, oh my goodness, and sidestepped as I dropped the saw, watched it go over my shoulder. It's not probable, but nevertheless, so time is not fixed. Yet, when we look at plants in the garden, often time becomes the most critical and important issue, which, we cheat ourselves. Yeah, we cheat ourselves. When we decide that something that will take 7 years to make fruit, that's too much time. We can't put that time in to plant that thing. Then, my philosophy on horticulture is you will never have what you don't plant. Pretty simple. X that one out. Sorry, you're never going to eat fresh Japanese persimmons from your backyard. No, that won't happen because you haven't got the time to plant them. Yet, it's as if the person knows how much time they have left. I mean, a few of us do. But even if the doctor told me, you got 6 months to live, I'd like to say, prove it, Jack. So hardly anybody knows exactly how much time they really have anyway. So it's kind of a strange judgment when we decide we don't have enough time to do one thing or another. I would suggest people plant what they love and not completely ignore timelines. I like Chico Sapote. I planted Chico Sapote here back, I think, around 2009. I'm still sitting around waiting for something to happen. The trees are looking good. I'm confident sooner or later they will probably make fruit. I like that fruit, and so I definitely want it here on the farm. I'm also looking for a source of seed to use for propagation in the nursery that I can control here right on the property. It will happen sooner or later. Not knowing that much about the specific environment where I'm living and how that particular tree reacts within that environment, and then of course to the kind of culture that I've given the tree too. How am I caring for the tree? I've noticed lately that some of the care I'm giving is improving things, so my care hadn't been that good early. I really don't know. That's not in a book. You can make general assumptions. I'd say it's pretty clear that at cool upper elevations, Chico Sapote takes a while to come around to fruiting. But I put the trees in because I love that fruit. I really like watching the trees grow, and it makes me quite happy when I do something and I can see, they grew better when I do this, and so on. So there's joy even though I'm not picking fruit from the trees. But the fact is, whether I pick fruit or I don't pick fruit is completely irrelevant. It is. Because I planted them because I like the fruit. Great. So we got a promise of the future. Right. On the other hand, if I drop dead before the trees yield fruit, what do I care? The dead don't eat. I won't have taste buds anymore. I won't be able to enjoy that succulent pears with brown sugar-like flavor of that fruit. It'll only be a memory anyway, if there's such a thing, even. So the idea that something takes too long to fruit and that we will never live long enough to pick it is kind of a funny illusion. Yeah, I call it time sickness. We find ourselves constrained and whipped by our psychological state over what we believe time is and how much of it we have and how fast it's moving, which of course is all completely illusionary. The only reason we see time in that linear sense at all is because of the way our senses are built. Yes, we're built to filter time in a linear way, so we live within that world. But that is not the only type of form of time. And in fact, linear time is subordinate to some other form of time that's more infinite. So it's pretty much all illusions as far as we're concerned. So there's a way around all this. Okay, there is. There's a way around all this. I'm never going to be able to change the entire world's idea on whether they got enough time to plant mangosteens or not. But crops come on in various different timelines, So when it comes to fruit, we'll keep it simple. We'll just talk about fruit here. With fruit, berries are pretty much the advance guard. Even in nature, that's where they are. When there's a fire or some destruction in the woods, berries are the ones that come up first, okay? They're a primary succession plant in nature. Well, in the garden and the orchard, they pretty much fill the same point. A strawberry planted in spring, ever-bearing type, will generally have something available by the first fall. Definitely in the second summer, you will begin picking lots and lots of berries. Raspberries and blackberries, they're about a year beyond, all right? So, strawberry, 1 year. Raspberries and blackberries, 2 years or so to get fruit on them. Here in Hawaii, we have pineapples that will take anywhere between 12 and 24 months to be able to make fruit. Pineapples are great fruit, okay, as far as I'm concerned. They're as good as just about anything else on earth. So let's say you're planting some citrus trees, mandarins, tangelos, we can figure that they're going to take usually 3 to 6 years. I mean, you'll pick something ahead of that, but you're not going to get enough of anything until the trees get some decent size. Most varieties will size up pretty good between 3 to 6 years, so you'll have decent picking. Well, if it takes you 1 year to get strawberries, and so if you plant strawberries, and then you plant some pineapples, and then you plant some tangerines, okay? Well, you got next year you're picking strawberries, year after you're picking pineapples and maybe blackberries or whatnot. And then again, a following year and beyond, you start picking citrus. Well, somewhere out there, the chico sapote and the mangosteen, which can take a long time to fruit, fall into play. Since you have strawberries and you have blackberries and you have pineapples and maybe you put in bananas too, which take about 3 years or so. Here you have all this fruit. Your kitchen's full. What's the problem with planting something that's going to take 7 years or 10 years or 25 years? It gives you something to look forward to. You put in a mangosteen that's probably going to take 25 years most of the time. I may not live long enough. I don't know. I've got them over here. I've got them. I can buy my mangosteens in the market in the meantime if I want to eat some. But what is the loss of having planted the tree? There isn't one. There is no loss in having planted the tree. There's a certain sensation in my heart about knowing I have a mangosteen tree. I may never eat the darn thing, but I have a tree, and it is growing, and it's heading forward. So it's this progress thing, You can see when you did something that made it go forward or backwards, that you get this dopamine feedback, in the garden. Yeah, I have a number of crops out here that I'm still sitting around waiting on. When I put them in, I probably had no idea how long they were really going to take in my environment. Much of this was fairly new to me. I'd grown temperate and subtropical crops most of my life, but raising tropical crops was all new some years back. I've been learning slowly about it. But, the papaya, for instance, the papaya will start to make fruit usually in the second year or so. So by planting a papaya and 2 chico zapote, 2 more papaya, and so on. Again, what is the harm? In the case of the chicos, they're slow enough that I have pineapples growing in rings down around the bottoms of the trees in the meantime anyway. So integrating crops that come on at different times and at different duration lengths, but that will basically represent a similar category. When we're talking about fruit is fruit, man. I mean, okay, some people don't like strawberries or whatever, so you get your personal taste, but as far as I'm concerned, fruit is fruit. And it's very difficult to raise apples here. It's very easy to raise pineapples. It's not so easy to raise pears, right? But it's really easy to raise papayas. And so fruit is fruit. We all get used to whatever it is that comes in out of the garden after a while. There are a whole lot of people out there right now, I know, that crave having these tropical fruits that I'm somewhat indifferent about because I can't raise apples very well here. So I gotta eat my darn papayas. But there are people where apples raise well that go, oh, I wish I could grow papayas like Bill. Yeah, that's we do this. I do it too. But yeah, so time sickness in fruit trees, really. How to avoid time sickness with fruit trees? Plant things in successional steps of increments in time. Make sure that when you're planting strawberries and berries and pineapples and bananas and papayas, which will come on quickly and you'll be able to have stuff to eat, make sure that you include some of the other things that might take quite a bit longer in the same process. I mean, just because it takes 7 to 10 years to raise jabuticaba, don't leave them out. This is what I'm getting at. Don't leave them out when you see, I see it all the time. People just turn around, walk away. 7 years. 10 years. No. It's weird. But no, just because something takes that long, don't leave it out. Because, if you happen to move on in life to some other state and you end up in Kansas and your jabuticabas didn't yield, you'll be starting over again with pawpaws or something else in Kansas anyhow, so it doesn't matter. If you didn't live long enough to pick the jabuticabas, they say the dead don't eat, you won't care. So that's irrelevant too. About planting trees, final word. One of my dear friends in life, is one of my mentors, Hank Klaproth. Hank was pretty close to 100 years old when he passed away. He'd been around the planet for a long time. We used to sit and talk story a lot. I learned a lot about what the country even looked like when Native Americans still lived in wigwams in Wisconsin. But Hank was very much into trees. He just loved to plant trees. And the day he retired from farming at 65, he bought himself a poor piece of sandy ground in central Wisconsin, sold the farm in Racine County, and he started planting pine trees. Pinus resinosa, the red pine, or it's sometimes called the Norway pine, but it doesn't come from Norway. It's a Great Lakes native. He started planting those trees, and when I knew him and he was still spry enough to run a chainsaw and peel a log, Hank was building log cabins from the trees he'd planted the day he retired. That was kind of a lesson for me. But then I'd catch him, 86 years old, he's out with a iron bar, planting black walnuts in fall. And all the neighbors would say, Hank, you'll never see those trees grow. It takes 100 years for a black walnut tree to really size up. And he'd just go, that's right. And kept planting them. He didn't care. It wasn't important. It was the act. Yeah, it was the act he was engaged in. And I truly believe that when we make catharsis with long-lived things like trees that might live for a couple thousand years and more, that when we make an attachment, kind of like my cat Gracie, they don't live that long compared to human beings, but they make attachments with people. It makes their lives better. When people who really don't live that long make attachments with something like an oak tree, it makes their lives better too. Yeah, share the timeline of the Eternals. Plant some more trees that you'll never harvest. Hang loose, folks. Aloha.